We live in a world obsessed with comparison. We do. Status, success, followers, image. But today, we're going to confront a truth that asks us to go deeper. What happens to the soul when we look down on others or look up with envy? What part of us begins to die when we measure our worth by the scale of others? Comparison. Disdain for those below you and envy for those above you is a way of darkness. Let's sit with this today. I am Justin Gates, host of the New Ashland podcast, my co-host Michael. And
hey guys.
Welcome to the show. So let's define this a little bit real quick, and then we'll just kind of dive into it, because this is a topic that I really need lately. I've had a rough couple of weeks where I've fought with some of this. And, Michael, we were talking before the show how sometimes when we're going through some stuff and we, need a little boost, we find these topics that really kind of get us through things, right?
Yep, helps with that perspective.
It does. And it also goes to show that although we give advice, spiritual advice, sometimes other kinds of advice, that we need this too sometimes. It's, we're not the end all be all of all this. And, it's what I love about the axioms is that I go to them every time I need them too. And I've been teaching them for a while. And I think I teach them proficiently at all three of the levels, the apprentice level, the mid-level, and the higher level. But we all go through it, and sometimes we need to hear this stuff too. So thank you for indulging me today.
Good stuff.
So this axiom teaches that the posture of our heart and how we regard others is just as important as how we act and how we speak and we think about others. And this axiom warns us against two subtle but really corrosive patterns: looking down on those we perceive as lower or lesser than us, and resenting those that we perceive as greater or more lucky or in a better position. These attitudes are not neutral. They create division within the soul, and they separate us from the force.
It's like you look at it, it's all in the realm of comparison, right? It's the more you go down this path, the more you realize how we're all on our own journeys, and that it's not a race, as we bring up often. But we can get caught up in the loop of either comparing ourselves to people doing better than us and feel that envy and just... Or we feel the other, which is disdain, which is where we judge others for where they're at in their journeys. When we have nothing to compare, when we can't understand the struggles and the situations that both these situations have led them to, whether lower or higher.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you can go both ways. You could be envious of someone that you look down on.
Yeah.
Why do they get all the luck? Why do they get all the whatever it is? It seems that way sometimes, but like you said, we don't know what actually brought them to there or what they're going through. So why don't you define disdain and envy for us?
So envy is a smoldering desire to have what someone else has, whether that's character traits, whether that's possessions, lifestyle, whether that's reputation, whatever it is. It is a desire to have what someone else has that you do not, is the way I look at envy. And then when it comes to disdain, it is looking at someone and persecuting them for their life, their lifestyle, and their choices.
Yeah. Disdain is something that stems from the ego and pride. Being too prideful causes this. It's that illusion of superiority. It assumes that some lives are less valuable than others, and it really shuts down our heart, slams the doors on connection. It dulls our compassion. It fractures our unity, especially if you're looking down on someone who's close to you. And envy is one of those things that arises from this illusion of scarcity or insecurity or lack. And it's really dishonors us. Those on this path, you and I and others who follow similar paths, it really dishonors that.
Yeah.
It erodes our gratitude and just closes us off really, really badly. So, together, these two things create a spiritual posture that blocks the flow of the force, of the light, of truth. And they really are the seeds of this darker path. Not shadow, but dark path, like this conscious path that goes, away from ours. And when it's left unchecked, you get really bitter. You're in constant conflict with yourself and everyone else around you. And it starts to corrupt and corrode you.
Well, and it's like disdain and envy, I think both are so heavily ego driven.
Mhm.
I mean, often it's a protection mechanism, whether it's us trying to feel superior or it's our ego trying to push us down to make us feel small. I mean, you'll notice there's usually a pattern. Sometimes they can go hand in hand, but also you can lean one direction or the other depending on how lost in your ego you are. In that book I've recommended before, The Laws of Human Nature, they have a whole chapter about envy and how envy can be so destructive in relationships because when you're in a relationship that is ruled by envy, you become spiteful, you become destructive to these connections. And I imagine disdain is the same way, those
Yeah.
slight jabs at people's self esteem and self worth. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm going through something like that right now. And I won't get into it because those people may see this and get a misconception. But yes, I feel that. I feel exactly what you just said. Sometimes it's both, you know?
yeah,
So, our path, the way of Ashla, okay, this is how we stand away from this. And this is what we teach instead of allowing yourselves to become envious of people or looking down on someone. Our way is one of equality, of humility and resonance. I want you to understand that the Force makes no distinction in worth. It doesn't compare us. We are just a part of its balancing act, okay? And we believe that all beings are sacred and that all paths have a purpose. So to live this axiom is to reject comparison and
yeah,
kind of start remembering that we are interconnected and to meet others as best we can. And it's hard. Like I said, I'm going through this right now. And I haven't become envious or looking down on these people, but I've come close, man. I've like skimmed the water. You know what I mean? I just
yeah.
skim the water and then I bring myself back out of it because that's the way.
Yeah, well, it's like you brought up earlier. We're human. And I mean, even especially you who's been on this path for so long, you still suffer from the human condition. You have that awareness now where, I mean, again, you'll go through the motion. This
Yeah.
path isn't to rid yourself of this stuff, it's to
Right.
become aware of
If
these
only.
black holes that try to drag you in
Yeah.
because you're going to skin over the top. I don't care how zenned out you are. People will rub you wrong. There are going to be moments that you feel these emotions and you learn not to let your ego take you down this rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah, becoming aware of it is really the first step, as in most of the things we talk about. So let's discuss how disdain comes from this sense of superiority, separating ourselves from that interconnected, even though we're not, but we really trick ourselves into that illusion that we're creating the separation. And disdain is another bad thing about disdain. It dehumanizes people, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, I've seen disdain grab people by the throat. And
Mm,
when it has them in its clutches, it's crazy how someone can go from maybe having, I don't really care for this person, to automatically, this person is horrible for every reason in the book that they
right.
can muster. True or not, they believe it.
And everything they do, oh, that's horrible. And blankety, blankety, blank, and lots of little swear words and words that we couldn't even say on an adult show, probably.
Yeah.
So disdain, again, it's the way we describe it from our teachings is it's this posture of false elevation, kind of artificially put ourselves above others. And it really comes when we start to see ourselves more evolved or more intelligent or more successful or more right. Especially on this path, it's the more I'm more righteous than you. And sometimes it's subtle, especially for those who work without mentors who kind of been dragged themselves through this mud, and they tend to become more right than the next guy. And it's everything. It's like this condescending glances, or a dismissive thought, or kind of an opinion about someone, or a judgmental whisper.
Right.
But it does. It really, no matter how subtle or how bold you are with this, it really just burrows a hole right to where your soul sits. It kind of taints your heart if you sit with it too long.
Yeah.
So, it's not just pride. It's like, think of it like weaponized pride, right?
Yeah,
You know?
that's a good way to phrase it.
So, and it really draws this line between self and other.
Yeah. Well, when you say it's almost like a tearing structure, it's like, again, you caught it as it skimmed the surface. It
Right.
could have burrowed a little bit, and then that's when the little intrusive thoughts will be like, that guy's a total jerk. And then
Right.
it goes a little further, like, did he just affront me? Then it goes a little further, like, hey,
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. When those when those planes start to attack my, my aircraft carrier, I've got good anti-aircraft stuff, but sometimes they get close, man. Sometimes they do. Because it's easy to get caught up in this, especially if you feel like there's a layer of just blatant disrespect. If you assume someone's just constantly disrespecting you, and then you start to create conditions upon your relationship, and then you start to create, well, the hell with it. If they say this, then I'm going to shut down, and I'm going to find a way to teach them a lesson. How dare they?
Right.
Above you. How dare you speak to me this way? And it really has nothing to do with any of that. In reality, those are illusions. So,
well, it's kind of like what we talked about in our last episode about the inner critic, right? We start having these monologues about all these different outcomes, all these ways that things can happen. And we get lost in situational awareness where we try to plan for 100 outcomes. We end up having the worst responses because we let our minds go ahead and dictate how bad everything is.
Right.
And yeah, it's a roller coaster.
It is, and it's not a great one. Not a great one. So when we draw that line, that's when we start to dehumanize people. And that's a really bad place to be. When you're starting to look at people as not people anymore, history is littered with really, really horrible stuff because people became dehumanized. And, we're not talking about this on a grand level, even though it's happening, and it does happen somewhere every day in the world. We're really focused in on how to trying to keep ourselves from becoming that way.
Yeah.
And, when we do that, the next thing we start doing, we stop seeing the fullness of another being. We start picking him apart, like you said, this guy, he does this and she does that and whatever. And you're just tearing them apart.
Well, isn't that like the media's number one goal? Not that not that I want to go into politics, but it's all about creating as much disdain for the other side as possible, and for these individuals, whatever it is, about how horrible they are, and they start planting those seeds because we as people, we have a negativity bias. The reason this stuff is so dang sticky is because our minds are trained. If we hear 10 good things in a day and one bad thing, I promise you, the thing you're going to remember at the end of the day is the bad thing. We are negativity absorbers, and the more we allow ourselves to be driven to focus our attention on those negative things, the more we'll assign definition and meaning to exactly what you're saying. We'll dehumanize people, we'll dehumanize groups, and it's one of the reasons we have such poor communication going on in society nowadays, is because we've dehumanized one another to some extent or another if we have any type of association with anything.
Well, and misery loves company. That's why that makes it easy to do that. And also, most of us are super busy. So we just take these things in bite-sized chunks, what they're feeding us, and we don't bother to stop and see what the food is. So, and that's human nature.
I like that analogy. My God.
I mean, it really feels that way because it's like everybody is too busy. This isn't a complaint for those listening and the ones who listen to our shows in totality. I love you, but we get a lot more traction on our small little bite-sized pieces of the show that we put out there, and that's it's not better or worse or good or bad. It's just that's the way it is because people are busy and they want to see, they have time to bite this chunk off. But what we don't realize, and I'm guilty of this too, I'll check TikTok, for example, for a little bit. And it's all these super little bite-sized things. Next thing I know, I've been scrolling for an hour. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, I could go into that right there. I mean, dopamine, the way that impacts your brain, the way that instant gratification is so easy to wire into people. I just finished a book called Anxiety Generation, and it talks about how it's like the impact of how anxiety is so predominant in the youth nowadays because of smartphones and social media and all these quick dopamine hits, and we're not learning to work hard for gratification instead of just being able to get all those happiness chemicals by scrolling through a couple different reels.
Right. Man, you read a lot of books. I wish I could read as many books as you do. Do you go like into a place where time doesn't exist and you're able to read all this stuff?
Man, I got a 2-hour commute and I'm usually on my own at my job.
Yeah,
So that's
you do,
50
yeah.
hours a week I got to put in.
And what sucks is you don't live 2 hours away from your job. It just takes you that long to get there.
I had a 3-hour commute last week. Yep.
Oh, no, nope, I don't like that. So We stop recognizing people's struggles. We stop empathizing with them. We forget to look at their light, the what's inside. And then, like you said, we reduce them to a label. We start labeling them. And then we start ripping off those labels piece by piece by piece. And we're taking chunks of them as we go. People say, oh, it's lesser than me, or they're lost. They're lost. That the word lost goes way back into early human spirituality. There's a quote that goes with that: all who wander aren't lost, or something like that. I paraphrase that, but
I
that
know
one.
what you're talking about.
Or they're beneath me. I've heard that before. Never said it, but I've heard it. But I may have felt it a few times, or 1,000, as I grew up, right? And it goes back to this, especially if there's like this illusion of disrespect. It's like, they are beneath me. That's a very dangerous place to be. And again, this illusion of superiority, it separates us not only from each other, but from the very flow that we are attempting to live our lives on. Because look, again, the force flows through all things equally. Just some of us are more in tuned than others, but everybody can be in tuned. Everybody can be where everyone else is. So there's no reason to compare. And there are no hierarchies in the eyes of the universe, simply balance. So the moment we place ourselves above someone else, we really are starting to choose separation over unity, ego over presence, and really a darker path over the path of light.
Same goes if we choose to see ourselves as below somebody.
Yes.
Another book I'm re-going through, the Courage to be Disliked, and it's talking about how superiority complexes and inferiority complexes are the exact same thing, just two sides of a different two sides of the same coin. You have one side, which is exactly what you're saying: I'm above everybody else, which creates separation, or I'm below everyone else, which then creates separation. You either live from pity or you live from power.
Right. And here's another thing about this saying that's bad, and actually really could grow your issue here, because it becomes invisible over time. Its disdain can be and is often used as a shield. We trap our own insecurities inside, and then we start judging those of others, or using them against them, which is probably one of the worst things you could do in a relationship, because people open up to you, they tell you things that could be used against them, and especially things like insecurities. Sometimes this comes from fear about our own inadequacies, and it feels safer to look down on others.
Well, it's like the pretty wife syndrome, right? It's where someone gets married, has a pretty wife, and the wife likes to go out with friends and go have a good night, and she might dress really appealing. So
Mm-hmm.
the insecure man will then put down his wife and just tear her down for how she looks or
If he never dresses
how
that
she's going.
way.
Yeah, exactly. And then it creates down them, but it's all the insecurity of the husband doing that. And I
Right.
mean, this goes both ways, but it's a good example
Of course.
of what you're talking about here.
That's the most likely example that I know of. I mean, I'm sure it happens both ways, but I've seen it happen the way you described it. So this shield also becomes a prison. And the more we use it, the more further away we get from people and from truth and from the light. It's the way, from the perspective of our teachings, to start to disdain people in such a way is really to forget that everything that we do is sacred. So, and that every soul is on a journey, and perhaps you will align with them at times and other times not, but it's okay, because everyone's on their own kind of journey, and that you too were once in a place of confusion or inexperience or ignorance or struggle. And guess what? It's easy to return to those things too. So, there is no nobility in standing above someone else or everyone else. The only nobility is in lifting others up. And not like Darth Vader either. I seen that meme the other day. Said something about good leaders lift up their employees, and it's just Darth Vader choking the crap out of somebody. Nobility is found though when we lift others up while staying grounded ourselves in the truth and understanding that we share this humanity together. There's human and there's humanity. That's really all there is to it.
Well, and it's just so often, I mean, when our egos get hold, when we don't learn to keep our ego in check, it's such an easy path. The biggest issue with disdain and envy, they become lifestyle choices if you don't catch on to them. Often, they will start off as just something you're going through in the moment. But once you realize, you get that little itch scratched, where you realize, because the problem with these kind of things is they give you something. Whether that's good for you or not, it's not the problem. Like it'll give you something, and often it's a quick fix. It's
Yeah,
easier than close connection, hard conversations. It's easier than humbling ourselves, especially when it comes to disdain.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. That's perfectly said. So let's reflect on how envy is driven by actual comparison. Well, disdain is too, but we often see envy more of a comparison because of what we perceive somebody to have and desire, and that leads to that resentment and dissatisfaction of what we have. Our that illusion of lack. I find it funny on this because I don't remember where I seen it, and I read a story about somebody looking at doing social experiment about how most people on social media are kind of fibbing about where they're at and what they do, and you know what I mean. They really pad the stats, and then people look at that, they go, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I wish I could do that, or I wish I could have that." I know people that I know them in real life, and then I see their social media stuff, and it's like, what are you talking about, dude? I know you, and this is not in
You,
line with what I know of you. So, is this part the truth, or is the part I know the truth? So envy is ironically, and look, I hate to say this, but it's true. Envy is like almost a socially accepted poison, right? And
yeah,
it poisons our heart, but it's like accepted. Like it's cool to be jealous. It's cool to be envious. And I don't get it because it's very quiet and maybe it's not so brash or what's the word I'm looking for? Aggressive like disdain. Because when you really don't like somebody, man, sometimes you let them have it. But
right,
envy's not loud like anger and like disdain. It doesn't like hit you like violence or, harsh words. It kind of whispers, it watches, and sometimes all it takes is a simple glance, right? Someone had
right,
someone had like you see something and you see something that somebody else has, and now you want it. And that could be wealth, beauty, peace, attention, whatever. You love, whatever. And then something within us says, why not me? Or then it turns into, they don't deserve that. So we start to get kind of mixed in here. They don't deserve that. Why don't I have that? And, we're looking at things that may not actually be true. And that's the problem with envy. You may be looking at an illusion built on top of another illusion, and now you're creating an illusion,
you
and it's
know.
real thick.
Well, and the problem with envy, also compared to disdain, is it's more of the insidious worm. It is much more subtle as it integrates into your
Mm-hmm.
perception. You don't notice it's there until it's there. I've met a lot of people who struggle with envy who have no idea they struggle with envy.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and part of that in our society, at least, and it probably isn't true throughout the entire world, but at least more in the West, the Western Hemisphere, we have this thing called consumerism, and it is
Yeah.
it is this thing that makes it cool. Well, I want that. Well, go get it. Well, I can't afford it. Well, we'll give you credit. You can have whatever you want. You're just gonna be paying for it for
Yeah,
literally.
I actually wrote a paper on this in social psychology towards the end of my semester, where we had to talk about our philosophy, sorry, and it was about political systems. And
Mhm.
it's like, what do you expect from your government? What can the government expect from you? You know that famous
Yeah,
quote. And it's like, the problem is people look at this the wrong way. It's all about what kind of lifestyle do you want? You look at places like Denmark where there's free healthcare, most people are working their passion jobs and are able to have a roof over their head and a comfy
right.
lifestyle.
Imagine.
Yeah, right. But the trade off is look how many nice cars they're driving. Look at how big their houses are. It's not that big. They
Right.
don't have consumerism nearly as much out there because their measurement of happiness is based off of fulfillment next to the West, which is consumerism. How much money can I make? How much reputation can I have? It's all about how much can I get, which is one of the things that's really been corrosive to this society and why communities evaporate is because it's becoming more and more it's me, 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 me. Which also is like to your point, why envy is breeding so much within society nowadays and disdain.
Yeah.
I saw this post the other day and I loved it, and it's made me really reflective because I've really grown a lot these last couple years. And it's like the more you grow and expand and build, the more you will lose your empathy.
Mm.
And it's like I've had to reflect on that where I realize I catch myself where it's like a lot of people from my past, it's like they're struggling through what I did. And it's like, this is what you can do to get your life in order. And it's like, whoa, bro, that's not helpful. And you start to catch those things
I've been
because,
talking about that before.
you know,
Yeah. Where it's like, well, because we sometimes forget how hard it was for us. Because once we integrate with a lot of these ideas, well, then we're at peace most of the time.
yeah,
And it's like we forget.
it's not just common sense, it's instinct at this point.
But for us, it's common sense.
Exactly.
When we compare, when we hear somebody else say it, it's like, dude, that's common sense. Just do it, right? Just do it. But for us, it is just effortless action to a point. We still suffer from it, but when it happens to us, we recover quickly. So it's like, well, why can't you recover quickly? Well, because we forget how far we come with these things.
Yeah.
And look, this is the root of envy. Comparison that's laced or interwoven with longing, right? So and that's what makes it powerful. Once it starts to kind of weave its way in, we start to long for things, and we may not be longing for the right things. I'm not going to judge that because I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing for somebody to have wealth. I don't see wealth as the problem. I see these other things that sometimes come with wealth that may be the problem. But the root of that is comparing. And look, because we don't just see what another person has, we start to measure ourselves against that. It becomes less about the thing and more about the person with the thing. And we start to compare ourselves against that. And slowly our thoughts start to turn from being inspired by somebody who has something to being irritated that they have it and we don't, right?
Yeah.
So, and then this person that we're envious of, they become like the living symbol of our lack of the things
Right. Well, that's good. Yes.
So envy is not about them. It's about us.
Yeah.
It blinds us to see what's already in front of us, all the good, all the things that we have so many reasons to be grateful for. And then we start to feel like we're not enough, and it starts to talk to us and tell us we're not enough. It robs us of gratitude, and it clouds our vision with these illusions, with this dissatisfaction.
Yeah. Well, and it's like one thing I want to point out with envy too is envy isn't your friend buys a house and you're like, man, I want to get a house like that. Envy is that voice that then turns it to, why does he get a house like this?
Yes. Why does he deserve a house like this? Yes. Yeah. That's a perfect point. Because sometimes we can be inspired by the things people are doing and their success. And that's a good thing to be inspired by.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that helped me get my life on track is I look at a couple of my friends I grew up with who have homes, have their lives together, degrees and whatever, and it's like, man, I want to get to that point where I can live that level of comfortability. But
Right.
it's, hey, man, congratulations, like you totally deserve this.
Right.
And now I need to put the energy and effort because I see what you had to do to get here, so I want to do it my way.
Right. Right. And if they're good friends, they'll like get her done. Cheer you
Yeah.
on. If they say you'll never get to where I am, then you might want to
Rethink your friends.
or have a little chat with them. Really, what this boils down to is to envy another's light is to forget that you carry your own flame. That's what our teachings tell us, and each of us carry that flame, and that flame is enough to light the whole world of flames. But it really is something to understand that the light of another doesn't diminish yours. We all have these different purposes, and we all have these different paths, and just because they have more or have things that you long for, instead of saying, why do they deserve it? Why can't I have that? They're not as good as me, right? These kinds of
Right.
language. Envy says their success diminishes mine. But the way of Ashla tells us their life or their light is proof that light exists and is possible in everyone.
Right. Man, it's like they tell you, like, when you start a business and how you'll have people tell you can't do it and stuff like that. Often you will find most of those naysayers, some of them might have your best interests in mind and are just, hey, is this a good financial decision? But you'll find a lot of them, it's because, damn, I wanted to do that. That's something I wanted to accomplish.
I didn't have the courage to take
You
the leap.
know?
Yeah. And that's why, our guests that we've been talking to over the last, well, since we've been doing this podcast, all of our guests are successful business people, but their business is their passion, is the thing that they love. And, we always ask them either offline or online, tell us about how, you came to that spot where you're at the edge. You are ready. You got everything in line, and now you have to take this leap of faith. And most of the time, we get the response that, well, yeah, it was scary, but I just said the hell with it and took the leap. And a lot of people won't take that leap ever. And that's one thing that they'll now envy you for. There was something, and I think I've said this before, but it's tough to do a business or run a business or start a business and expect the closest people to you to support that. Most times they don't. That's just the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Most of the people that support this show by watching and sharing and stuff like that aren't people that we are personally. Yeah. Those people never share anything, hardly ever. Heather does, but Heather's kind of a part of this. You know what I mean? It's not like so. But and my mom shares stuff, but no one else really does ever.
Yeah.
We do have a group that helps, share our stuff on Facebook, and I'm very grateful for them. But and look, I'm not saying you guys are a bunch of whatevers because you don't share stuff. It's not what I'm saying. The truth is, you get more support from strangers than you do from people in your life. So, with that being said, Michael, we really shouldn't listen to all of their naysaying either. So, right? I'm at the end of the
Negativity bias, right? I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the what ifs and the should I's. I remember the first time I wanted a podcast and I was letting one of my buddies know, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, you don't have a script? You don't have bullet points, you don't have this or that." And it's like, for me, the script, I was like, "Oh my god, like, do I have to read off a script?" And I tried it like the first time, and 10 years went by, like, I'm not doing this. Now we do this, and we have like a few cliff notes, but it's all ad lib
yeah,
because
just some little notes, and we just go with it. But
well, and I think the other big thing for people is, and I mean, again, this ties into the other side where it's people who are concerned for you. We all crave familiarity and security. And starting a business, these people that we become envious of in our lives who have nice cars, big homes, start businesses, it's because they were willing to see what the unknown had to provide. They
right.
were willing to take that leap. And in the unknown is where the most amazing things happen because when we can, who said it? When you sacrifice security for freedom, you don't deserve either.
So let's talk about how both emotions stem from a distorted sense of self and prevent us from connecting with others and growing in virtue, as envy and disdain applies to this. And disdain and envy may seem like opposite things, opposite kind of feelings or emotions. One looks down, the other looks up. Both grow from the same root, and that root
Yes.
is a distorted sense of self.
Well, and again, both come back to comparing. I mean, in my opinion, that's the number one thing that does it.
Yeah. Well, and again, disdain tells us that we're better than everyone else. Envy tells us that we are less, or we're unlucky, or everyone has stuff we want. They don't deserve it, but we need it. We want it. It should be us. But in both cases, we're looking outward to start to try and define who we are. We're getting away from the part that's important, and we start to look outside. We start to create evidence, right? Everywhere we go.
Right.
And there's no shortage of that. When you start looking for this, you're going to find it. But the problem is you're looking out here instead of tending your garden in here. Like instead of rooting ourselves in truth and in the forest or on the path. And instead of measuring ourselves by our inner truth and inner life, our growth, tending to our growing our vessel and tending to our character. We begin to measure ourselves by contrast instead of, looking for those kind of the seeds of interconnectedness, the evidence of that. We just start to measure ourselves by contrast, by comparison, by separation even, because it's like, envy. I'm comparing myself to this person. I want their stuff, but when I'm looking down upon them, I'm separating myself from them.
Yeah. Well, in contrast, I mean, that's at the root of so much of our philosophy because the more we try to find contrast in the world, we'll find it, but the more it taints our perspective because then it creates where things are either good or bad.
Right.
The more we can release that veil of things just are. Again, it ties back to we don't know what these people went through to get what they have when it comes to envy. You know, that person with the nice cars in the house and the business, I'll bet you he's pushing 120-hour weeks and has been making pittance up until the business took.
Yeah. And she's probably fallen on her face more times than we know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and because we just have this illusion about them, we disconnect from them, and we don't even care if we don't care about the truth anymore.
No.
The more we hang on to this, and really, this this is a really fragile way to have an identity, and it's built almost lopsided to ego and not presence and not essence. And as the longer we cling to it, I like to hold on as tight as I can. As long as we do that, we're disconnected from truth. We're
Yeah.
disconnected from other people and from our path. As we start to stray off our path, it's really kind of to put it into a very short and sweet perspective. Disdain prevents us from loving. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Envy prevents us from receiving. So we're really screwing ourselves twice over when we do this.
Yeah. Never thought about it in that context, but I see your logic there. Because yeah, and realistically, the more envious you become, the more lack you're going to have in your life. As
Mm-hmm.
above, so below.
Yeah.
And same with disdain. You're going to start pushing people away. You're going to start judging more and more people. And you're going to begin to isolate yourself and emotionally guard from anyone because of superiority.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, disdain blocks compassion. And compassion is at the center of our path, because, again, we see people as beneath us, and envy blocks gratitude. Compassion and gratitude are very important tools on our path, and envy blocks gratitude. And they both prevent growth because they put us into this loop. We talk about loops a lot, rumination, and because we get trapped in this loop of external measurement and internal satisfaction, because we are creating an illusion outside of us and then blaming it for everything and then holding on to that. But that's not the way of Ashla. The way of Ashla is to clear the illusion, have clarity, and to step out of that.
Well, again, it's the ego and the pain body, right? They're trying to make us identify with them. They're faces on a wall and they're trying to move our perspective into their skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is. This is the ego trying to hijack you and make you identify with it. And when you're coming from a place of awareness, of authenticity, you're going to realize that this is just a survival instinct going off, trying to dictate your thoughts, opinions, and beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's now explore how humility and compassion counter these things. We got to come back full circle, right? So if disdain is that shadow that blinds us to the worth and value of people, their sacredness of their being, then humility and compassion are the light that restores our vision. We start to see things more clearly now. We start to use truth to combat this illusion. Disdain says, I'm above you. Humility says, I too have walked the hard road, right?
Yeah. So I mean, when we look at humility and compassion, like I've struggled with envy before. I mean, we all have to some degree. And it's like the one thing for me that I found really benefited me. I remember there was one time where it's like I had bought in a car and one of my friends had bought in a car right after I did. He got the envy bug, he bought a nicer car, and it was just like, you mother trucker, you couldn't let me have 2 weeks of having the nice car in the friend group, you son of a. And I remember it's like I had to sit with myself and sit with that storm inside of like, I can't believe, and me coming up with every reason why this was messed up and how it's like this was unjustified. And it's just like the more I sat with it, I looked at it, it's like, look at me. I'm acting like a 2-year-old who just had his sister get a toy.
Right.
Like, come on. Like, is it a big deal? You got this car for you. Did you buy it for stature? Is that why you bought this car? And I started analyzing, like, what are my motives with these emotions? And the more I sat with it, the more peaceful I felt. And then I got to looking at the reasons why, you know what? I should be happy for my friend he got this car. Was driving a beater at the time. He's a mechanic, so he loves cars. So
Right.
there's that. It's like me. It was the second car I ever bought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a car lover. I got it because it fit me.
Right.
And the more I started going through this process of looking at the reasons why he deserved this, like this is his
Mm-hmm.
journey right here. This has nothing to do with me.
Right.
Yet at the same time, it also made me realize the emotions I felt had everything to do with me.
Right.
I wasn't affronted. I chose to be affronted.
Right.
And the more you can allow yourself to sit with that, the more it'll dissipate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Cars are a good one. I think everybody's people. A lot of people are jealous about cars. I notice. And I was talking to one of my coworkers. I don't know when. It was a while back, and we were talking about how when we were younger, we would buy cars so we could, get chicks and be the cruise them up and down. So because we're cool
You
uh,
know?
and as we get older, it's like I don't have the energy for that. I just want to get to work.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. For me, it's like I look at how much of a waste of money nice cars are.
They
It's like,
are.
am I really gonna go spend 50,000 on something, pay these huge car payments for 7 years, and then I can sell it for 5 grand? Like, it's throwing money away.
It is. It is. But you don't. But you don't learn that till it's too late.
Yep, pretty much.
So humility is not about self deprecations. I've heard people on paths kind of like opposite of ours saying, oh, to humble yourself is to humiliate yourself or bring yourself lower. It's not about that. And I'll debate that with any of you out there any day of the week.
Throw it in the comments. We're ready.
It's about perspective. It's about knowing who you are without needing to be above anyone else or below anyone else. Humility grounds you. It frees you from the ego and pain body and all those things that may be out of control from time to time. It frees you from their domination, from their need to dominate you. So, and compassion goes even further than that. It says, I'll hold space for your pain even when I don't understand it. It bridges that gap. I got to throw a bridge in there.
Yep, I was waiting for it.
It bridges that gap between people. It starts to build that understanding. Compassion doesn't ask whether someone deserves kindness. It just offers it because that's what light does. That's what truth does. That's what love does. It just offers it because that's its nature. So when we approach others with humility and compassion instead of, disdain and envy, we see potential instead of judgment. We offer support instead of condemnation. You don't deserve it. What about that thing you did? What about that thing you did? That condemnation, that's big judgment, right?
Right.
We grow together instead of keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, it buys a car, I buy a car. It buys a house, I buy a house. He has a bigger lawn, I have a bigger whatever.
Yeah.
So a night on the Ashla path, an Ashla night, the Luminari. These are different ranks within our path. They walk with others, not ahead of them, not behind them. They walk beside them, and it doesn't matter where this other person is along their path. Bring ourselves to walk beside them to show them that we respect the sacredness of their being.
Well, and it's like the more we can separate ourselves from other people, it's not a matter of comparison. And we all have our own journeys. The only person you should ever be competing with is yourself.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the places many people get hung up. We live in a society where competition is bred into us. We're constantly competing with people, and a little competition isn't bad, but there is a healthy line there where it becomes self-destructive. I mean, I have found it's like that's one thing I've always been thankful for is I've never had much of a competitive attitude until I discovered how much joy I find in growth and doing 3 month little markers of like, where am I at today compared to 3 months ago? But often we try to use that as a baseline of where should we be in life. I mean, look at Colonel Sanders. That dude didn't start KFC until he was 70. And he was poor and destitute before that happened.
yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but it's the perfect way to just show we all can come into our power at any time. We're never too old to start building our lives or our careers or our businesses or education. It's just up to us to stop looking at when everybody else did it because
Right.
that's not your path.
Right. Well, and they look at these kids, people who were kids, and they started, Facebook, or they started these other places, and they're not even out of their 20s, and now they're billionaires. Some of them, you can't compare yourself to that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, right?
It's
The
crazy.
0.01%, 0.001%. That's madness.
It is madness. And it would have been madness for them to think that way. They just pushed forward. And so compassion and humility helps cure disdain. What do you think? I'm gonna quiz you here. Let's see if you can get this one. What do you think the cure for envy might be?
Self-validation? No.
That's what. Well, I mean that might be some small part of it. But that wasn't what I was looking for. It's an unfair question because you don't know what I'm looking for, right?
Well, it's a good question though.
So I'll give you the first one, and let's see. I'll give you the harder one because one of them's easy, one of them's hard. The harder of the two is admiration.
Yeah.
Admiration helps. What do you think the other one is?
Celebration for the other person?
Celebration. That would be admiration. Yeah, that would fall into there. How about gratitude?
Yeah, that's a good one right there.
That's the one. So when we talk about envy and we talk about creating these illusions of lack, people better than us, whatever the case may be, gratitude clears that fog. It does because it tells us, well, what I have is pretty awesome. What I have is good. If I'm eating, if I have a roof over my head, there's tons of stuff to be grateful for, even though we're looking at what other people have. And admiration is kind of that flame that reignites this inspiration, right?
Yeah.
To if I want to be like this, well then how do I get there? And I'll watch them and I'll surround myself with these kind of people. That's what entrepreneurs always say. You want to be like these people, then you must surround yourself with these people and push out the ones that are telling you, are you crazy? You can't do that. You'll go broke, whatever.
No.
So
You are who you spend the most of your time with.
that's right. Gratitude and admiration, I would say, kind of helps us defeat envy.
No, and those are the perfect contrast to that, or the perfect combatants for that. I mean, I think one of the places a lot of people get hung up on, especially with admiration, is we got to be able to, if someone is an expert guitar player, could play any song, and you're like, I need to ask this person how to become a guitar player, you need to accept that you're going to be having to play thousands of hours to get where they're at. And a lot of people don't want to take the time to get there. So you can have admiration where it's like, I respect what you're doing and the effort you've put into this, and
Yeah.
really put that into your awareness.
Yes.
Or, in turn, if you want to build a life like them, be able to humble yourself and be like, tell me how to take the first steps. Help me work something so I can start building like you did. And understand that building a house is a lot more than throwing up a couple beams, some wood, and it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you really have to be careful what you build it on. Are you building it on sand or solid ground, right?
Yeah.
So, being grateful, it just reminds us that there is enough. You don't have to be envious in a bad way. You can admire what people have. Gratitude also helps us be grateful for our own journey. Every single failure, every lesson, every delay, every step, we stop seeing other people's success as a threat to our own because it really isn't.
Right.
And their path is not in competition with ours. There's an axiom for this. It's a reflection of what's possible. If we look at things from a lens of admiration, then we start to see, damn, that's possible. It's possible to do that at 25, but it's also possible to start probably one of the world's most famous chicken joints at 70.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, admiration is this ability to see someone else's success and light and let it guide you forward towards your own success, towards your own goals, and not blind you with comparison. So, yeah. And of course, there's always the disclaimer. Yes, Justin, it's easier said than done. Yes, I know it is, but you can do it. You can do it.
Practice, practice, practice.
Practice, practice, practice. Surround yourself with people who do it. So, are we ready for our exercise for today? Do you have anything you want to add before we get into the exercise?
If you find yourself dealing with having patterns of disdain or envy, one important thing to remember: awareness is key. You are cultivating this. It's not something that's going to change overnight, and it's not something to judge yourself for. Once you know better, do better.
Once you know better, do better. Yes, sir. Or at least practice doing better. You'll get it. I brought 3 quick little exercises for today. Very easy, and they kind of hit on different points we made today. So when you feel envious, when you see it coming, or you've experienced it, and now you're at the end of the day and you're starting your reflection and you're going over what I do good, what I do bad, that kind of time. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for. It's a really simple one in your own life, and one way that you can work towards your aspirations. And that way could be reaching out to people that you know who has achieved what you're aspiring to. That could be, whatever. So what kinds of education do I need? What kinds of, but really starts with people who have done it, because you're going to get a much broader idea of how you can work towards those, because you're going to have different people who've done it different ways. So that's the first exercise. This one might be a little tougher, but it's still a short one. Name 3 people who you feel that are below you. And I want you to write down one thing from each that you can learn from. What can you learn from people that you're looking down on? And if you really make yourself do this, I promise you're going to find several things that you can learn from them. On the flip side of that, name 3 people that you are envious of and write down what you admire, and then act on that. Don't be envious. What can they show you? How can, what path to this thing? And the last exercise today, it's a fasting, but not with food. It's fasting on not comparing yourself to anyone. Do this for 3 days. Just try it for 3 days. If 3 days are hard, then do it for 3 hours. Work your way up to a day. Work your way up from there to 3 days of not comparing yourself to anyone. And redirect every thought into an affirmation or a service, or do something to take your mind off of that envy and switch it to something different, like admiration. Yeah, just switch it to admiration. Just admire it. Maybe not all of them should be admired. Use your judgment. So here's our affirmations for today. I release disdain and envy, embracing humility, respect, and gratitude. I honor the light within myself and others. I rise by lifting others. I release all need to compare. I am on my path in my time. There is no rank in the light, only resonance. I see the sacred in all who walk beside me. I am enough. I am light. In our journaling prompt for today, reflect on a time when disdain or envy clouded your perspective. I'm literally going through this right now. As I said, the journaling prompt that I'm sharing with you today is literally the one I'm doing for myself this last week or 2. So reflect on a time when disdain or envy clouded your perspective. How did it affect your thoughts and actions? What could you have done to approach the situation with compassion and gratitude? I'm all
That's
tapped out.
good.
I'm all tapped out, brother. You got anything?
Man, you came fully loaded for that one, though.
Yep. Well, as we were talking about offline, it's easier. Sometimes it makes it easy when we're in the thick of these things personally. And, it's great that we can talk these out
Yeah.
each other and just boost that perspective, that awareness and clarity.
Yeah. Bring that back to the forefront of our own minds, because often when we get in the thick of it, when it's trying to skid on the surface, it starts to cloud our perspective. And it's like, nope.
It does. None of us are safe from our own darkness.
100%.
It just gets a little easier each time to come back. Just gets a little easier to see it. But when we see it, we must stand away from it.
Yes.
Shout it from the rooftops. So thank you so much for joining us today. We love you very much. Until next time, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.